AOL was built for the dial-up age. Its business model fit a world where people paid for access. They needed a service to get online. They needed software. They needed a guide. They needed a company to hold their hand. But broadband changed the relationship. When faster internet connections arrived, the online world no longer felt like a place you visited for a few minutes. It became always available, always open, always waiting. You did not need to dial in the same way. You did not need the same front door. The internet became less like a destination and more like electricity. And when access became ordinary, AOL's role became less essential. That answer is true, but it is not the whole story, because AOL did not simply lose to faster wires, it lost to a new philosophy. The open web beat the closed garden, search beat the menu, free services beat monthly subscriptions, specialized platforms beat one giant portal, and younger companies understood the new world better. Google did not try to organize the web by building a private neighborhood. It built a map for the chaos. Yahoo tried to be a portal. Facebook tried to become identity. Amazon turned the web into a marketplace. YouTube turned it into television. AOL had once bundled everything, but the internet was splitting into sharper, stronger pieces. Each new company did one thing better than AOL could do everything. That was the real danger. AOL's strength had been convenience. But once the web became easier to navigate, convenience moved somewhere else. It moved to the browser, then to search, then to apps, then to phones. The center of gravity shifted, and AOL was still carrying the weight of an older world. But before the fall became obvious, AOL made one of the boldest moves in business history. In 2000, AOL announced it would merge with Time Warner. At that moment, the deal looked like the future swallowing the past. A digital giant joining with a media empire. AOL had online access, users, email, chat, and digital energy. Time Warner had magazines, movies, cable television, music, and prestige. Together, they were supposed to create the ultimate media company. Content and distribution. Old media and new media. Hollywood and the internet. It sounded unstoppable. But some deals are announced at the exact moment when the ground is about to crack. The dot-com bubble was already swollen. Internet valuations were detached from reality. AOL's stock price gave it enormous power on paper, and that paper power helped it buy one of the biggest media companies in the world. But when the bubble burst, the dream changed shape. Suddenly, the numbers looked different. The confidence faded. The cultures clashed. The old media people did not fully trust the internet people. The internet people did not fully understand the old media machine. The promised synergy became corporate fog. AOL had wanted to become the future of media. Instead, the merger became a warning about what happens when hype moves faster than strategy. And inside that warning was another human decision point. Steve Case had seen the possibility of online life before most people. He had helped make the internet mainstream. But the Time Warner merger became tied to his legacy in a different way. The deal was supposed to secure AOL's future. Instead, it became the moment when AOL's confidence turned into vulnerability. The company had reached the top, but the top was built on a market about to collapse. When the internet changed, AOL needed to change with it. But giants do not pivot easily. They have old revenue to protect, old systems to maintain, old customers to serve, old assumptions baked into every meeting. AOL's dial-up subscribers were still valuable. They paid monthly. They created reliable money, but that money also made the company slower to abandon the past. This is one of the cruelest traps in business. The old model can be profitable enough to delay the new one. AOL still had millions of users, still had brand recognition, still had email accounts, still had a homepage that many people visited. But the emotional center of the internet was moving away. Teenagers were no longer discovering the online world through AOL chat rooms. They were finding new platforms, new identities, new spaces. The web was becoming faster, visual, searchable, and social in ways AOL had not fully controlled. The company that once made the internet feel human now looked like a reminder of how the internet used to feel. That is the painful part. AOL had many of the right ideas early. It had messaging, it had profiles, it had communities, it had content, it had online shopping, it had subscription revenue. It had a massive user base. It understood that people wanted the internet to be social. But being early is not the same as being ready. AOL's chat rooms were early social networks, but they did not become Facebook. AOL Instant Messenger was one of the great communication products of its time, but it did not become WhatsApp. AOL's homepage had news and entertainment, but it did not become the modern feed. AOL had pieces of the future, but the future reorganized those pieces in different hands. AM is one of the clearest examples. For a generation, instant messaging was not just a tool, it was a social world. Away messages became personality, buddy lists became social maps, screen names became digital masks, people flirted there, fought there, waited for someone to sign on, measured relationships by who was online and who was silent. That emotional behavior looks familiar now. Status updates, online presence, read receipts, private messaging, digital identity. AIM had the ingredients of a social platform, but it lived inside a company still shaped by the access business. It was powerful, loved, culturally important, yet it did not become the next internet empire. That is the difference between invention and capture. You can create a behavior, but if someone else builds the platform that owns that behavior at the right time, they inherit the future. AOL also faced a branding problem that no engineering team could fully fix. For millions of adults, AOL was the friendly door to the internet. For younger users, it slowly became the thing their parents used. And in technology, that shift can be fatal. A product can still work, it can still be useful, it can still have customers. But once it begins to feel old, the future starts looking elsewhere. Coolness is not the same as strategy. But in consumer technology, perception becomes gravity. People move toward what feels alive. AOL felt like the past at the exact moment the internet was becoming culture. Still, it would be too simple to say AOL just failed. Because AOL also succeeded in a way few companies ever do. It changed what ordinary people expected from computers. Before AOL, going online was not a normal family activity. After AOL, it was. Before AOL, digital communication felt technical. After AOL, email felt personal. Before AOL, online communities were hidden. After AOL, they were part of everyday life. AOL did not build the final version of the internet, but it trained millions of people to want one. That may be its most important legacy. It made the internet less intimidating. It made a computer feel connected. It made a screen feel social. It gave people their first taste of digital presence before the world had the language to describe it. And then, when the wider web was ready, those people walked through AOL's door and kept going. They did not stay inside the walls. They wandered into search engines, websites, social networks, video platforms, online stores, and eventually the glowing screens in their pockets. AOL had introduced them to the city, but it could not own every street. The company continued after its peak. It shifted toward advertising, content, media properties, and later corporate acquisitions. The name survived. The email addresses survived. The nostalgia survived. But the aura was gone. AOL was no longer the company that defined where the internet was going. It had become a landmark from the era when the map was still being drawn. And maybe that is why its story still feels strange. Because AOL was not a tiny startup that missed its chance. It was not an obscure product no one understood. It was massive, famous, profitable, culturally embedded. It had the users every company dreams of. It had the habits. It had the attention. It had the sound. You've got mail. And yet, it lost the center. That is the mystery at the heart of AOL. Not that it failed because it was wrong, but that it faded because it was right for a world that changed too quickly. It solved the first problem of the consumer internet. How do you get normal people online? But once that problem was solved, a new problem appeared. How do you help people navigate everything? Then another. How do you find anything? Then another. How do you connect everyone? Then another. How do you carry the internet everywhere? AOL answered the first question brilliantly, but the companies that answered the next questions became the new giants. The lesson is not that closed systems never work, they can work beautifully, for a while. A closed system can make chaos usable, it can protect beginners, it can turn complexity into comfort, but if the world outside grows faster than the walls inside, the same system begins to feel small. AOL's garden was useful when the internet was wild. Then the wild became the main attraction, and people left the garden to explore it. There is something almost poetic about that. AOL wanted to bring people online. It did. AOL wanted to make the internet mainstream. It did. AOL wanted to turn digital connection into a normal part of life. It did. But the more completely it achieved its mission, the less the world needed AOL to do it. That is the paradox. The company helped create a future in which its original purpose disappeared. And in technology, that is one of the hardest endings to survive. Not destruction by one rival, not one bad product, not one stupid mistake. But success that changes the world so much that the old business no longer fits inside it. OL was a bridge. For millions of people, it was the first bridge. From offline to online, from lonely computers to connected lives, from physical mail to instant messages, from local conversations to digital communities, from curiosity to habit. And bridges are not always where people stay, they are where people cross. In the end, AOL was not simply the company that owned the internet and lost it. It was the company that taught the world how to enter the internet, then watched the world walk past it into something larger. The door was never the destination.